Good afternoon. Welcome to the Knowledge and Learning Commons. My name is Anna Sofia and I work at the United Nations office at Geneva. If you're new to the Knowledge and Learning Commons, this is our space for informal learning, knowledge sharing on issues of both multilateralism and professional development. Today, we are talking about the future of translation. Before we get started, I'd like to welcome our guests in person with us at the library, but also joining us online from different places, as this is a hybrid event. A big welcome to you wherever you are. This session will mainly be in English, except for some parts that will be in French. For our participants online who don't speak the language, you can activate the live captions in your language on WebEx. If you have any questions, our team behind the scenes is here to assist, so please do let us know in the chat section on WebEx, or you can raise your hand if you're with us in person today. Now, let's have a look at our learning objectives for today's session. We're going to learn how our culture influences our way to translate. We'll also look at the challenges in the translation process to achieve accuracy and how AI techniques facilitate the work of language professionals. And finally, we'll also hear about the evolution of the UN translation in the last 30 years. This event is an interactive session. We will be using Mentimeter to ask you some questions. You'll find on the screen a QR code, or just in front of you, that you can scan using your phone or simply go to menti.com and type the code on the screen, 7743502. We'll put that code in the chat for you. So, as we were saying, today's event is about the future of translation, and it is open to everyone, ranging from expert translators to those interested more broadly in languages. As a warm-up, we do have a question for you. Join us on Menti by scanning the QR code or with the code 7743502 and answer the following question. What brings you here? We would like to know you, your background. Are you a student in translation, a language professional, or just a curious person about languages and innovation? Okay, let's see the result. Empty curiosity. So this is the majority. Translation. Okay, we can see that we have really a very wide audience, but maybe a majority in the field of translation. Oh. Thanks a lot for your participation and stay tuned for our next moments on Menti. So today we have a full suite of speakers who are experts and practitioners in translation. They will shortly give presentations in their field of expertise. In between presentations, we would like to engage with you and play translation-related games. Stay tuned to participate. Finally, during the presentations, we suggest you to make use of Mentimeter or the chat to ask questions. Those addressed to our speakers will be promptly handed over to the panel discussion moderator. And speaking of which, please let me introduce our moderator, Michelle Keating. She is the Chief of Languages Service here at the UN Geneva. Her staff has provided 70-odd million words translated per year. She will be the moderator for the panel discussion. But prior to that, Michelle Keating, if you'd like to share a few words, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna, for your welcome. Allow me first to welcome all of the people who are joining us here in the room today, as well as those who are joining us online to help us celebrate International Translation Day here in the library at the United Nations office at Geneva. On the 24th of May, 2017, the General Assembly adopted Resolution 71-288 about the role of professional translation in connecting nations, fostering peace, understanding and development, and declared the 30th of September as International Translation Day. To paraphrase the resolution of the General Assembly, they affirmed that professional translation, as a trade and an art, plays an important role in upholding the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations, bringing nations together, facilitating dialogue, understanding and cooperation, contributing to development and strengthening world peace and security. Language is a fusion of the common and the unique. It reflects the idea of the strength of a united world which stems from its diversity. Professional translation of a literary or a scientific work, including technical work, from one language into another language is indispensable to preserve clarity, a positive climate, and productiveness in international public discourse and interpersonal communication. It's an honor to be here today to recognize and pay tribute to the work of my fellow translators and language professionals. 5 years after the declaration of the International Translation Day, despite global pressures and challenges, language professionals continue to contribute to bring nations together, facilitate dialogue, and generate mutual understanding and cooperation. I'm here today to reflect on the role of translation with a very distinguished panel. It's an honor to contribute to this discussion, and I'm excited to hear from my colleagues. I look forward to the panel discussion after the presentation from our colleagues. Thank you, Anna.
Many thanks for your words. Okay, now, without further ado, let me introduce our 3 guest speakers. From the University of Geneva, we have Mathilde Fontanet, Associate Professor of the Faculty of Interpretation and Translation. Joining online from MIT IBM Watson Lab, we have Rameswar Panda, Research Scientist. And from the UN Office Geneva, we have Anne Fassot, Chief of French Translation Section. Welcome again, and thank you a lot. Our first speaker is Mathilde Fontanet. She will present the current training challenges and what we need to take into account when we translate. She will give her presentation in French, so I remind our participants online to turn on the live captions on WebEx. Mathilde Fontanet, la parole est à vous.
Bonjour, je suis absolument ravie d'être ici pour parler avec vous de traduction. Et j'aimerais commencer par souligner que la traduction est une activité très complexe. Quand on traduit un texte, même un petit texte, énormément de facteurs entrent en considération. Tout d'abord, la fonction du texte. Un texte peut avoir pour but de convaincre ses lecteurs et ses lectrices d'un point de vue. Il peut y avoir un but esthétique. On peut vouloir aussi simplement expliquer des notions plus clairement. Et en fait, selon la fonction du texte, il va falloir le traduire différemment. On va mettre en avant certains aspects plutôt que d'autres. Un autre aspect important est le lectorat. On ne va pas traduire de la même façon si on destine un texte à des enfants qui ont peut-être un vocabulaire moins riche, si on décrit un principe scientifique à des profanes qui n'ont peut-être pas toute la terminologie en tête, et ainsi de suite. De même, le contexte est important. Si vous traduisez un texte qui a été écrit par une personne dans l'hémisphère nord et qui va être lu dans l'hémisphère sud, vous allez peut-être tenir compte simplement des saisons. Si on décrit la beauté d'une saison, il faudra bien prendre en compte le fait que la saison ne sera pas la même dans l'autre hémisphère. Ensuite, le support est aussi important. Certaines traductions sont là vraiment pour remplacer l'original, au point qu'on oublie l'original. Dans d'autres cas, la traduction vient l'éclairer, l'original, ou bien donner accès à ces subtilités. On pourrait penser ici à des éditions bilingues, vous avez en regard un texte original et sa traduction, ou le cas très fréquent des sous-titres, où vous entendez la bande-son originale et vous lisez le texte traduit. De même, les langues ont une façon différente de découper la réalité. Il y a eu beaucoup de débats là-dessus. On ne peut pas dire que la langue va déterminer exactement la façon dont on perçoit la réalité, mais elle va l'influencer. En particulier, s'il y a des connexions entre certains mots, eh bien, les objets auxquels se réfèrent ces mots vont paraître plus liés pour les locuteurs et les locutrices de la langue en question. Ensuite, vous avez aussi des normes, vous avez des habitudes culturelles et sociales. Par exemple, si vous traduisez un texte vers une langue dans laquelle on s'exprime avec beaucoup plus de politesse en général, où on doit être beaucoup plus formel quand on s'adresse à quelqu'un, il va absolument falloir en tenir compte, parce que sinon vous pourriez blesser les personnes qui lisent, par exemple lors d'un discours, ou bien si c'est une lettre qui s'adresse à des personnes. De même, certaines langues peuvent s'accommoder de davantage de familiarité ou même d'une certaine grossièreté, alors que d'autres les supportent très mal. Enfin, vous avez bien sûr les clients. Les clients ont parfois des exigences très personnelles. Par exemple, aujourd'hui, certains clients souhaiteraient par exemple, utiliser le langage inclusif, alors que d'autres ne le voudraient absolument pas. Ici, j'ai cherché à symboliser en fait, le fait que quand on traduit un texte, il y a plusieurs mouvements, si vous voulez, plusieurs démarches concomitantes dans l'esprit et dans les sensations de la personne qui traduit. Il y a d'abord beaucoup de sensibilité. Donc, j'ai cherché à symboliser ça par la poignée de main qui permet de sentir beaucoup d'éléments comme la température de la peau, la nervosité, la douceur de la texture de la peau. Eh bien, c'est la même chose quand on traduit un texte. On va ressentir énormément de choses, l'aspérité des mots, des connexions entre les mots, des associations, des connotations, des oppositions. Donc, il y a vraiment une perception du texte qui est très émotionnelle, si vous voulez, très sensible. Et parallèlement, vous avez aussi une démarche très rationnelle. Vous avez une analyse qui s'opère, qui fait que tout ce que vous ressentez, vous allez quand même le filtrer. Vous allez en même temps rationaliser ce que vous voulez restituer. Et c'est ce qui donne lieu à une interprétation. Vous allez établir une forme de classement. Il y aura des priorités. Vous allez décider qu'il faudra essentiellement restituer tels aspects plutôt que tel autre. Et donc, ce qui apparaît en dessous sous cette diapositive, eh bien, est relatif à la restitution. Donc, toutes les émotions que vous avez ressenties en tant que traducteur, traductrice, lecteur, lectrice, vous allez chercher les mots qui permettent, les phrases qui permettent de le transmettre à vos lecteurs et vos lectrices, mais vous allez quand même aussi intellectuellement valider, vérifier, et donc ce processus complexe s'opère aussi lors de la reformulation. Ici, j'ai cherché à symboliser, par ce dessin assez coloré, le fait qu'au fond, tout cela se produit d'une façon qui pourrait paraître même confuse, de manière instantanée. C'est-à-dire que vous n'avez pas en fait une trajectoire linéaire quand vous traduisez. Vous êtes empli du texte source, vous avez déjà des solutions du texte cible qui vous viennent en tête. Tout va dépendre de facteurs là, comme j'en ai déjà énuméré plusieurs. Mais en fait, tous ces facteurs vont agir simultanément. Ça va être comme une forme de bouillon. Et vous allez produire un texte sur cette base. J'ai aussi ajouté finalement l'humeur du traducteur, parce que si on est fatigué, on ne va peut-être pas traduire de la même façon que si on est en pleine forme. Et on ne va peut-être pas traduire le même texte de la même façon un jour et le lendemain. Donc là, il y a le bon sens, vous avez les ressources linguistiques, et c'est là aussi qu'on voit qu'une personne qui a une excellente maîtrise de sa propre langue va pouvoir produire une traduction plus fine. Et de même, une personne qui a une excellente connaissance de la langue de l'original va pouvoir percevoir des subtilités qu'une autre ne pourra pas percevoir. Alors, aujourd'hui, on parlait de l'avenir de la traduction. Je pense qu'il s'agit quand même bien d'un avenir de la traduction. Je ne m'inquiète pas, moi, vraiment, de l'avenir de la traduction, tant qu'on est conscient du fait qu'il nous faut des traducteurs et des traductrices. Donc voilà, on a aujourd'hui la traduction automatique qui fait des prodiges, il n'y a pas de doute, mais il faut aussi connaître ses limites. Et vous l'avez bien compris, j'imagine, quand vous avez vu le dessin tout à l'heure, le logiciel, il ne va pas pouvoir éprouver des émotions, il ne va pas pouvoir réfléchir à qui est le lecteur cible, ou alors il faudra encore paramétrer tout ça de façon beaucoup plus complexe. Alors, pour illustrer un peu, si vous voulez, ce qui reste l'apanage de l'être humain par rapport au logiciel. J'ai pris ici quelques exemples de traduction. Le premier exemple est un texte tiré d'un article scientifique. Donc c'est une équipe de scientifiques qui définissent certains types de mémoire et des perturbations de la mémoire. Et on voit qu'ici, il y a un problème de formulation puisqu'on parle de a single event pour the memory. Et en fait, l'idée n'est pas de parler d'un événement, mais d'opposer plutôt justement quelque chose de ponctuel à un processus. On voit ça parce que dans le texte, on parle de multiple stages, et après, il y a carrément le mot process. Alors, DeepL, donc le logiciel, va traduire le texte de façon fidèle, on peut dire, mais on va reproduire cette façon de décrire le processus qui n'est pas clair. Alors qu'un esprit humain va corriger. On va parler ici de phénomènes ponctuels plutôt que d'événements uniques, et puis on va articuler la phrase autour du mot processus pour que ce soit plus élégant et plus simple. De même, il y a une inexactitude dans l'anglais, parce qu'au fond, on décrit un processus, et en fait, le traducteur ici, ou la traductrice, s'est aperçu que c'est un peu boiteux. Donc, soit on gomme tout à fait les 3 étapes clés de la mémorisation, comme c'est le cas ici, soit on va compléter le texte pour le rendre plus précis. Donc là, c'est un choix aussi que peut faire la personne qui traduit en fonction de la personne qui va lire le texte. Autre exemple, il s'agit d'un communiqué de presse de l'OMM. Et ici, il s'agit d'un concept important, c'est au tout début du comité de presse, et on est en train de décrire un phénomène qu'on décrit par l'interaction entre la pollution et le changement climatique, ce qui n'est pas très clair. Et après, on a ce concept de pénalité climatique qui n'est pas clair non plus en français. Alors, que fait le traducteur averti ? Eh bien, il va s'escrimer à trouver de quoi il s'agit. Il va aller chercher de quoi s'agit-il, il va aller chercher des documents, et puis il va finalement étoffer la traduction pour ne pas écrire quelque chose qui ne veut rien dire. Alors là, c'est peut-être un peu complexe, c'est un peu plus long, mais au moins il y a un sens dans ce texte. Autre cas, celui d'une lettre. Donc c'est un personnage, je crois que c'est un secrétaire général, qui s'adresse à des personnes très haut placées pour les encourager à remplir un questionnaire. Là, vous voyez que la traduction n'est pas mauvaise, mais il y a quand même une erreur. Par exemple, on ne dit pas qu'on va remplir une enquête, et de même, la phrase est assez laborieuse. Et au fond, là, on a un but bien précis. Qu'est-ce qu'on veut ? On veut que la personne remplisse le questionnaire et on veut qu'elle dise à tous ses collègues de le faire. Donc, parfois, une petite nuance, comme le fait de ne pas être assez flatteur, entre guillemets, de ne pas marquer assez de déférence, va empêcher en fait, la personne d'avoir envie de rendre service. Et puis peut-être le fait aussi simplement de négliger ici, de rappeler en caractère gras qu'il y a une date d'échéance, peut aussi poser un problème. Voilà, je ne vais pas m'étendre trop longtemps parce que je crois que les collègues ont d'autres choses à dire. Je voulais donner un tout dernier exemple qui est celui simplement pour montrer que parfois la richesse du vocabulaire peut aider. Là, vous avez un concept un petit peu laborieux de compréhension commune et d'accord sur des exigences. Et en fait, ça, on peut le reprendre par l'idée de consensus. Et vous avez une formulation beaucoup plus brève et plus efficace. Alors, je travaille dans une université, dans une faculté de traduction et d'interprétation. Et alors, si je veux résumer mon point de vue, enfin le point de vue de beaucoup de mes collègues, on va continuer d'enseigner la traduction parce qu'il sera nécessaire toujours de maîtriser les mêmes compétences. Mais on va quand même s'orienter un peu plus vers les compétences complémentaires à la traduction automatique, probablement. Donc, on va vraiment encore plus développer les compétences rédactionnelles, la capacité d'analyse pour se protéger de la tentation de reprendre des textes qui ne sont pas très adéquats, donc la vigilance et puis la polyvalence. Voilà, je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Mathilde Fontanet, pour cette explication. Et heureusement, on a panel discussion pour voir de manière plus approfondie en fait, ce sujet-là. So, I switch back to English. So now for our interactive activity, let's head to Menti. So you can scan the QR code that you have in front of you, or you can join on menti.com. and we will play the game Translate the Untranslatable. We chose the most difficult untranslatable words. The aim of the game is to guess the translation of the word on the screen with the help of a picture. So let's get started. The first word is a Japanese word. Sorry for my pronunciation. Amae. So is it the desire to be sick, desire to be taken care of, or the need of medical attention? Okay, let's go and see the answer. So the correct answer is the desire to be taken care of. I don't know, we can see, but I don't know if you guessed it or not. So now the next one is an Italian word, struggimento. What do you think? Is it feel the need to cry, feeling lost, or torment for someone we love? So the correct answer is a torment for someone we love. And now the last one is a Portuguese one, saudade. So what do you think? Is it, we're getting there. Yes, thank you. Waiting for someone to come, longing for something that doesn't exist, or enjoying going on the swing? So yeah, it is the longing for something that doesn't exist. Okay, so we'll go back to that game after our next speaker. Speaking of which, our next speaker is Rameswar Panda. He's joining us online. He will discuss how AI visual hallucination techniques facilitate the work of language professionals and what is the future of translation in the light of AI innovation. Rameswar Panda, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Rameshwar Panda. I'm a research scientist at MIT IBM lab. I'm very happy to give a talk on how AI can advance machine translation and in the event of future of machine translation. So one of the topic I'm going to talk about today is how visually grounded machine translation holds in the future. So most of the work in AI we see for natural language processing, they are mainly on text. But as a children, for example, we don't learn language from raw text. When we are learning language as a child, we learn from the visual perception grounded in the physical world. For an example, we learn language from perceptual context. Now, if you look into the image here, so that's a nice green block have there. So you see from as a child, we see the color green. So while understanding the word green, we see a green color cube. So now, if you look into that in the context of translation, now look into a sentence in English: a snowboarder wearing a red coat is going down on a snow-covered slope. Look into the same sentence in German. I can't speak German, so I'm skipping it. But those of you who know German, they can very well understand what is written here. Now, look into the same sentence in two other languages. One is French and another is Spanish. Now, a quick question here is, what do you see common in all these four sentences spoken in different languages? That it seems to be not a very difficult question. The answer is actually there is an underlying visual perception or an image which is actually shared across all the languages. There are thousands of languages in the world spoken currently, but the visual perception is shared across them. So motivated by this, we thought how grounding machine translation models in visual perception can take us one step closer to making machines learn like humans, because this is what we need for future of machine translation. We want to have the machines capable of translating languages, having these situated in the physical world, because we have so many stimuli. When we are learning language, we are having those external knowledge. Now we introduce a framework, we call it as a Bhalala. So how it works, it's a very simple framework, and it holds promise for improving the translation in many different languages. So one quick summary of the work is basically given a English sentence. For example, the same sentence: snowboarder wearing a red coat is going down a snow-covered slope. So there are so many AI techniques are there to translate into German. Now, one of the technique I'm showing here is it's called a transformer. So it's a AI technique used for translating one language to another. Now, we can use that to translate to a German sentence. Now, recently, research has been done to augment that AI system or the machine with these images, like adding an image to tell the system that, okay, you not only you look into the language or the sentence, look into the visual context, how it looks like in the physical world. So it has shown that it improves the performance of translation. Now, but a realistic scenario is when we are translating using a AI system, we cannot have that images available to us anytime. For an example, we are translating a news article, we cannot have images associated with that all the time. So then we thought of how can we achieve this without using the images during inference time. Now, so to actually solve this problem, we thought of an idea of, like, as a human, if I tell you what a snowboarder wearing a red coat, we can hallucinate in our mind what it looks like. Now, so this is actually an hallucination. Like we call it as a visual hallucination. Given any sentence or a news article with some known things, we can hallucinate in our mind how it looks like in the visual world. Now, then we thought about, okay, can this improve machine translation, which can be used in future to guide AI systems to do better translation. Now, so we designed the AI system, which is very simple basically. So it has two components. One is training. As like any AI system, we train the AI system or the machine to do machine translation using some data, and then after the training, we take it and deploy it for translating languages across translating sentences across different languages. Now, so how it works is very simple. So it takes a source sentence, given a source sentence, we pass it to a hallucination model. So now that hallucination model takes the sentence in one language. For an example, it takes a sentence in English language, then it thinks what it looks like. So it hallucinates a representation which can be used to improve the translation. Now here we use that and then augment that visual hallucination or how it looks like with the normal sentence, then pass it to another AI system, which is already within the entire framework to get the target sentence. So this is the black box overview of the system. Now, surprisingly, we are not using any images during testing time. During inference, we are not using anything for this AI system. Now, surprisingly, we saw that it improves the performance significantly in English to German and English to French. We did experiment using this AI system for about 15 language pairs for translating from one language to another, not only from English to German, English to French, also having also translating from one language to another without English as the basis. Now here you see, so we measure that we got a 2-point improvement in English to German and English to French, which are very well spoken in the world. But what about other languages where English to Romanian, English to African? Though these languages are not well spoken, how does this AI system helps in that case? We saw that it actually does better because we don't have much data to train the AI system. In those cases, if we can augment the AI system using this visual hallucination capability, then we can expect that it can improve the performance for the languages which are rarely spoken in the world. Now, we did experiments, I'm not showing here, as I showed, we did experiments with non-English, under-resourced, well-resourced. It consistently, the AI system did well in getting the better machine translation compared to only using the text. Now, just I want to show you one quick visual example how it does. So, if you look into this example in one sentence in English, two children, a boy in a yellow shirt and girl in blue and white strips swinging. So, this is the sentence. We want to translate it to French. Now, so the second part is the reference, which is the French. Now, if we give this to the source sentence in English to AI system, the output is like by removing. So while giving it to the AI system, we actually removed this word in blue and white stripes swinging. We only provided a part of the sentence and told the system, can you recover what is there in for the next? The system was not able to recover. As you see here, it only translated to two children, a boy in blue striped t-shirt and girl. Whereas our approach, by imagining two children, a boy in yellow shirt and girl, what could be they doing? By imagining this hallucination capability, it was able to recover the swinging. Not exactly white stripes, but it was able to say that two children, a boy in yellow t-shirt and girl in a white t-shirt, are swinging. So this shows one of the promising capability of AI systems in translating languages. Then another example, what we did is we just mask out one word, yellow shovel. Like as you see here, this image, a boy wearing a red shirt digs into the sand with a yellow shovel. So we remove the word shovel and pass it to a AI system. The traditional way of translating the sentences in AI systems by passing the text only was not able to recover it, whereas our approach was able to recover that clearly by translating it to the right sentence. So, these are the two examples which shows that our the visual hallucination capability can actually holds promise for future machine translation, and in future, if we integrate more and more stimuli from physical world, then we expect our AI systems can be further improved. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you a lot, Rameswar. We look forward to continuing the discussion during the panel discussion. So time has come for another session on of our game, Translate the Untranslatable. So I invite you all to go back to Menti, scan the QR code or join us with the code. And the first word that we have is again another Japanese word, agiotori. Sorry, I'm not Japanese. Sorry for my pronunciation. So what is the meaning of this word? Desire to change one's appearance, looking worse after a haircut, looking extremely attractive. Yes, so this is the answer, looking worse after a haircut. So I really hope that this never happened to any of you. Next word, it's a Georgian word, semomediam. So is it eating past the point of fullness, strong desire for pizza, or taking a break from a diet? I'll let you a moment to try and guess. see. A few seconds left to answer the question. Okay, so actually you all got it. It is eating past the point of fullness. Yeah, you got it. And I think we can all relate to this one. And last word, French. It's a French word, appel du vide. So is it fear of heights, willingness to clear one's mind, or instinctive urge to jump from high places? Few seconds left to answer. Yes, you all got it. I think we have a lot of French speakers in our audience. So thank you a lot. We'll go back to this game after our final speaker. So our final speaker is Anne Fassot. She will explain the particularities of UN translation and how it has evolved in the last 30 years. Anne Fassot, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, bonjour tout le monde. Very nice to see you all here. Sorry, I need a little prop here. Thank you. So I've been asked to talk to you about what is special about UN translation and how it has evolved in the last 30 years. So just a little caveat to begin with, I was not at the UN 30 years ago. I'm getting very close indeed, but not quite there yet. So I'm going to discuss 4 points about what's special about UN translation: the audience that we translate for, the clients we serve, the type of documents that we translate, and the quality requirements that we work towards. First of all, our audience is very, very wide. We don't usually know exactly who's going to read our documents. It could basically be anyone, because the documents we translate, most of them are available to the public. So the reader could be a diplomat or an expert or someone who works for an NGO or even a private citizen. As a result, the way we translate is actually the opposite of localization. Mathilde mentioned before that sometimes you will have to translate in a way that makes it easier for your audience to understand what you say. We do the opposite. We have to assume that pretty much anyone could be reading, so we have to use a type of language that could potentially work for the largest number of people possible. So in trying to do this, we try to write, I translate into French. I try to use a type of French that's not marked as particularly French or Senegalese or Belgian. So we have to try to use a language that's neutral in that respect. The clients that we serve, those of you who work for private entities know that clients may give a brief in which they describe what they expect from the translation. We don't usually get a brief. Our clients don't usually give us specifications or tell us, we want your translation to be more like this or more like that. So it's basically for us to decide what the best way is to do the translation. And our clients are often not available for consultations. So translators have to resolve ambiguities or decode unclear passages by themselves using their own judgment, because if a document came from, let's say, a government, we cannot pick up the phone or call them on Zoom or whatever. They're just not available to give us additional information. It's not always the case, but it is sometimes. The types of documents that we translate are extremely diverse. A colleague could be translating one day something on climate change and the next day something on electronic commerce. Somebody else could be doing law of the sea one day and the next day the UN budget, or the rights of people with disabilities, and then the next day electric vehicles. So it's very, very diverse. So we are in a situation where the drafters of the documents know exactly what they're talking about. They're very highly specialized, but translators are expected to write intelligently, hopefully, about a very wide array of different subjects. the types of documents that we translate can also be very, very sensitive or very technical, and very often are very abstract, which raises questions for me about the presentation that we just heard. How are we going to use hallucination to help translation of very abstract documents? So I hope we'll get an answer to that very soon. Now coming to the quality requirements, there are, as you can imagine, very high requirements. We have very many rules and standards that we have to take into account where we translate for many reasons. First of all, because of political sensitivities, there are some words that we know we should not use, or that we shouldn't use in certain contexts, or so that really has to be taken into account. You have to know that. Also, we have to follow up-to-date official terminology in order to avoid confusion, because if we use different terms to say the same thing in different documents, people are going to get confused. And another thing is we need to write as one, because we're a very large group of translators, and it should not be obvious to the reader that this person translated or that person translated. It's a UN translation, and it should appear as such, not as the translator produced by a particular person. So we have to to follow the standards in terminology, in style, usage, spelling, and everything that's proper to the UN. As a result of all this, it's not enough to write something that's correct. It's not enough to produce a correct translation. We also have to produce a translation that fits in with a large number of documents in the same series or corpus. And this is one of the limitations of machine translation. Machine translation is going to translate the words, and it's not going to be able to take into account all those requirements that we have and all the previous documents that have been translated on the same subject at the UN. Another requirement that we have is we have to have absolute neutrality. Again, I go back to what Mathilde was saying about emotions, things like that. We cannot put our emotions in what we translate. We have to be neutral towards the text, and we have to have the ability to translate in a way that's neutral. You possibly could be aware of the need to be neutral and be unable to use the right words to actually be neutral. And sometimes also in that respect, we have to resist a client's requests to use certain words, especially in the political realm. Sometimes a client or a particular country will call a translation service and say, I would prefer if you would use this word rather than that. And we have to make a determination whether this is sufficiently neutral or whether they're trying to influence the translation in a way that fits their purposes, but maybe not the neutral purpose of the United Nations. We also need to use a formal register in our translations, because this is a particular type of language that we use, but also while writing as clearly as possible about very abstract issues. So it's a set of sometimes conflicting requirements that we have to take into account. We also have to take into account the risks attached to some documents. Sometimes a mistranslation could have legal repercussion. For example, if someone is translating in New York a resolution of the Security Council, the resolution has legal implications for member states. You don't want to make a mistake in there. We also translate, for example, very technical norms for the Economic Commission for Europe. And again, you don't want to make a mistake in a technical document that states norms or standards for electric vehicles. That would be a serious issue. And we also need to create new terminology on emerging issues, which can create pitfalls. Mathilde again mentioned inclusive language. Sometimes we have to come up with new ways of saying things. And of course, we have to, at the same time, remain neutral and make decisions for which diverse countries may not all be ready yet. So it's sometimes very, very tricky to make those decisions. We had a recent case where, as some of those of you who know French may be aware of this, the old translation of human rights is based in French on the word les droits de l'homme. L'homme meaning a human being, but also a male person. So there's been some people would like this translation to evolve, but do we make the decision? Do we follow the requests of those who want it to change? Do you follow the choice of those who don't want it to change? It's sometimes, again, extremely tricky to make those decisions in a sensitive, multinational and political context. So you can imagine sometimes how tormented we are when we are faced with those tricky decisions. So the part about the specificities of UN translation is now over, and I'm going to take you back to the past to describe to you how things have changed in the last 30 years. So we've heard about a possible future. We've heard from Mathilde about the present training of students, and I would like to, I think some of you are going to find this funny because you're so young, and you're going to hear some of the things I say and think, how could you possibly have done your work that way? But I assure you, everything I'm going to say is true. And I think what I'm going to be able to show, what I hope to be able to show you, is that a lot of things have changed on the surface of things, but basically translation is still what it used to be. So 30 years ago, I'm going to use Exhibit A to show you how we worked. This is a dictaphone. When I asked our IT specialist to find one for me, it was very hard for her to find one because it was buried very, very deep under a lot of other things. But this is what we used at the UN when I started my career. So basically, you would insert a tape in here, and then you would use this mic to dictate your translation. So it's basically a very, it's like a tape recorder. Maybe some of you had tape recorders when you were little. So basically, this is what we use. We would dictate our translation into the mic. Then when we were done, we would eject the tape, walk it down to the corridor, to the typing pool, where a typist would type the translation, then print it, give us back the papers where the translation was typed up, and then we would manually make changes, give it back to them so they could type the changes, and then it would give us the final text. So this is, I know this sounds very, very bizarre. It was actually not that difficult, and it's not really that different from what we do today. So everything was paper-based at that time. The translation process, the revision process, the reviser would just basically annotate manually the translation. The job submissions, we would receive pieces of paper with the documents to translate. The job tracking, the productivity tracking, everything was paper-based. To do research, we had to find information, same as today, but we don't have the internet. So we used paper dictionaries, paper glossaries. We had to get a lot of information from more experienced colleagues. And we also had very useful colleagues called reference assistants who would go and dig out information for us. They had microfilms, things like that, where terminology would be recorded. And we also used literally cut and paste, physical cut and paste. We'd use an old document, cut a piece out of it, and then staple it to a new piece of paper that we would give to the typing pool to retype as part of our translation. We also had terminologists who actually made phone calls to people. They would call a library and say, would you have information on this particular subject? The librarian would go and find something in their book, call back the terminologist who would call us back and say, I found something. And at some point, we also had a Minitel that we used, which is like this small machine, and then it printed out results on one of those old printers that went like that. So today, no paper at any stage. As you know, no translation is done on paper anymore. We use all electronic tools. The UN has developed its own system for computer-assisted translation, which uses translation memories, terminology, and machine translation. So it's a mix. It's called ILUNA. Some of you may have heard of it. The UN has also developed its own documentation management system, which is called GDoc. And translators type their own work. I'm being told that I've gone on for much too long, so I'm going to try to go fast through this. So translation do their own research. Translators are expected to learn much faster, and translators are expected to participate in the development of IT tools that are used in translation. But what has not changed is that the product has to be the same quality as before. The criteria for evaluating translations are still the same. Accuracy, style, terminology, that's exactly the same. You still have to understand what you translate. The machine is not going to help you with that. It's going to translate word, but you have to translate meaning. You still have to have a very strong command of your main language in order to adjust the product of machine translation. You still have to have very solid general knowledge, because otherwise you can't decide if the machine translated properly or not. You still have to have a good analytical mind to understand the logical relations, and you still have to internalize a large number of rules about usage, which machine translation doesn't help with. So as a conclusion, I'd like to say that on the surface, things have changed a lot, but deep down, translation is the same exercise as before. It still needs a human brain to be done properly. And I do hope that our clients here at the UN realize how lucky they are that we still rely on a large core of internal human translators. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your presentation and all your very concrete examples, and also your office's perspective on translation services is an eye-opener of the progress made so far. So this is our last session of the game before moving to the panel discussion. So you can go back on Menti, and we'll go to the first word. So you can go back on Menti by scanning the QR code or entering the code. So the first word is dépaysement. So is it wanting to travel more, need of directions, feeling disoriented? Few seconds left, but this one with our French audience. Yes, exactly. So it is the feeling being disoriented. Okay, next word. So basorexia. It is a English word. Is it the sudden urge to kiss someone, persuade your partner to get married, avoiding taking big decisions? Few seconds left. I think it is quite easy. Okay, it was not that easy. So it is the sudden urge to kiss someone. And the last word is a Dutch word, gezelligheid. Sorry, we're getting there. So is it enjoying the rain, feeling cozy and warm, or spending quality time with your partner? Few seconds left. Yes, exactly, the majority guessed. So it is feeling cozy and warm, and I hope that you're feeling quite cozy here with us, maybe not warm. Okay, thanks for your participation. We hope you enjoyed guessing and learning those untranslatable words. Now we will continue this session with our panel discussion on the topic, what is the future of translation? Of course, we want to hear from you. After the panel discussion, there is time for Q&A. Thank you all, and I give the floor to our guests and our moderator.
Thank you, Anna. So let me go ahead and start with the first question to Mathilde. You've been working in the Faculty of Translation and Interpretation for many years, and you must have seen changes and adjustments to the university curriculum. Can you give us some examples? Is there something else you would recommend updating?
Since I started working at the faculty, there have been many changes. For example, an internship is now compulsory for students to do a master's in... I forgot to Shall I start again? No, I think it's all right. I guess. Well, I said that there have been many changes. Do you have two? First, an internship is now compulsory for all the students who are in masters. We made that decision so that they are better prepared for the professional market. Otherwise, for all master students, we have also introduced a revision course and a post-edition course. And we have a department of translation technology that is very dynamic, and it helps our students to keep up with all the technological developments. So, of course, we have to deal with post-edition and to define better how we should prepare them to be the best in post-edition.
Thank you. Nowadays, children start using technology at a very young age, and roles are reversed where parents sometimes ask their children to help them with the latest technology. Do you think students today are better equipped to face tomorrow's work environment?
Oh, absolutely, yes, I fully agree. Actually, I am one of those moms who too often depends on her kids to deal with tech stuff. Most students are very much at ease with technology, and they learn fast and they interact intuitively with the machine, whereas people like me very often sit there in front of the screen very helpless. So I'm not at all worried about our students, I must say, on the technical front.
On a more philosophical level, what do faculties of translation and interpretation provide that others, for example, in economics or business, don't?
Well, we really focus on communication, maybe much more than other faculties do. And our students learn to detect all the nuances of a text. They also grow aware of the impact of each word, how sensitive the significance of each word is. And when they choose to express an idea or thought, they really think about it twice, I would say. And today, people put very much emphasis on speed, and so much so that they tend to forget how intricate and sensitive communication, human communication is. And I think that's dangerous, because an inaccuracy or a misunderstanding can do enormous damage, and it can take very, very long to solve. It can be very difficult to repair such damage. So translators learn to respect both the author and the reader, and in this sense, they are true mediators. Their goal is to remove all obstacle to communication, and their sensitivity and insight allow them to contribute to constructive communication and exchanges. So we often hear this old saying, you know, traduttore traditore. I'm not sure I pronounce well, but I would rather say always trust a translator, always trust a trained a human translator.
Thank you, Mathilde. Let me now turn to Rameswar and ask a question to him. What do you think is the added value of Valhalla in translation compared to other machine translation methods?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, there are a lot of AI innovations coming in the space of machine translation. But as you said, like, if you look into the future, like in the future, we want to design AI systems that can translate not only languages which are very well spoken, but also languages which are rarely spoken. Yeah, so, which we call it in AI low resource languages. So the current systems, what we are using and have shown a lot of breakthroughs, they are mainly showing good performance on the languages like English, French, or German. But besides those languages, there are like more than 5,000 languages. So we need to design systems so that AI systems so that they can translate sentences of those languages which we don't have data for designing a general AI system. So the added value Valhalla provides is actually in translating those sentences from languages, because there you can have this sort of hallucination capability with less data, because we have as a human, we don't need a lot of data to hallucinate something. If I can see what's a red color, I can just by few examples I can understand what is red. So the added value or the advantage of Valhalla is actually to bring these novelties from external world, how you ground or situate your AI systems on the physical world to improve machine translation for low resource languages, which are where the existing AI systems are failing.
Thank you. I can certainly see the benefit for low resource languages, and certainly anything that can improve multilingualism would make it richer to understand. What do you think the future holds for machine translation in the sector? What are the innovations that we are heading towards?
Two innovations I would say. One is, as you said in the previous sentence, multilingual. So we don't want to have AI systems designed for a particular language base. I don't want to have a system designed for English to German, translating sentences from English to German. We want a giant multilingual model which can translate any languages from sentences across all the 5,000 languages. Like if I want to translate English to whatever languages I even don't know, so the system should be able to do that. So we are making progress in AI, in designing those systems, but still there are a lot of things to do in terms of that. So that is one innovation, having a multilingual model which can translate from any source language to any target language. Second is, like, while doing that, we need to think about low resource languages, because so these AI systems require some data for training the model, training the machine. Now, when we are considering 5,000 languages to train this model, we might not have enough data, because there are lots of languages in the world where only those are rarely spoken. So how can we design systems with very less data, like to generate better quality of translation for those low resource languages? These are the two exciting areas I am very forward to looking into in future. Like we are making innovations in both of the directions, either parallelly or some works trying to do that, but there are a lot of things still left in this space.
Thank you. So do you think that Valhalla will be adopted in companies or other organizations? Do you foresee any impediments to its adoption?
Yes, definitely. So we have open sourced everything on Valhalla. Like anyone can go and try it out. If you just search Valhalla for machine translation, you can get the source code, which is openly available, and anyone can just having their data, they can just train it or use our models for translating languages from, let's say, English to German or English to French. Yeah, I certainly see that Valhalla will be adopted in future for improving especially low resource languages, because this provides external knowledge from the visual world to improve the translation quality. We cannot rely only on sentences because we don't have enough sentences for translating low resource languages. So we have to look into external information where the Valhalla gives an added advantage.
Thank you. So Anne, let me turn to you. So what do you think is the added value of human translation?
The brain, Michelle, the brain. I mean, we've discussed a lot what the human can do that machine cannot do. It can feel things, a machine cannot do that. It can understand very abstract things and make sense of it. And it can take into account, even though machine should be better able to process a vast trove of data, sometimes it's the human who can do that better, especially now, because it would, for the machine to do it as well as the human, you'd have to program it so specifically that it would probably be much more expensive than using a human still. So the human brain is still able to process a huge amount of information and bring it together. And I really liked the graph that Mathilde showed with all these little pieces, that are done simultaneously and not always consciously. It's like making soup in there. Only humans can make soup.
Okay. So in your 30-year career, you must have had to translate ambiguous documents. Do you have a story to share with us?
Okay. I'm sure I've had to translate ambiguity, but what I'd like to say is ambiguity is the perfect example of the reason why you need humans, because again, you need to make so many decisions in a split second to properly translate ambiguity. When you look at your document, you have to decide, is this sentence ambiguous or not? If it is, was it on purpose or was it not? If it was on purpose, should I reproduce this ambiguity? Can I reproduce this ambiguity in my own language? If it was not ambiguous, again, can I do the same thing in my own language, render a sentence that's also not ambiguous? So I think, again, it's almost like a computer having to make all those decisions very fast, but only a human can do it.
Okay. So what would you recommend to a future translator?
Keep learning the basics, go to your niche and learn proper translation. It's an art. It's not everybody can do it. It's an art. It's a profession. You can't improvise yourself a translator. So keep learning the basics. Keep learning your own language. Expose yourself to the foreign language that you want to translate from, and be prepared to work with very different tools, because I think a lot of changes are coming in the technological realm. So ground yourself in the basics and also be prepared to evolve with the new technologies.
Okay. Thank you, Anne. I see that we have quite a large audience here with us in the library today. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to alternate taking questions from the audience here. And if we have any questions from the audience participating remotely, we'll also take questions from the audience remotely, but maybe we can go ahead and start here. We have a microphone right here, so if anybody would like to ask a question to any of our panel members, if you will just raise your hand, we can go ahead. Maybe we'll go ahead and go to Menti and see if we have any questions from Menti. Okay, so I see that we have several questions from Menti. Let me go ahead and go for the question that has the most thumbs up. So the question that has 4 thumbs up right now is, what advice would you give student translators to improve the quality of their translations? So maybe Mathilde, would you like to take this first question?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. First of all, I think if you like, the means, the tools of the translator are the words in a way. So I think one important thing is to acquire many words, to have a large vocabulary. So one important thing is to read or to listen to people talk well. But I think reading is still a very important way, a very good way of getting good words. I would say as well that once you start to translate, as you said, and I think you have it in you to become a translator in a way. It's an art. It's not given to anyone, but everybody can improve. So an important thing is to discover what our gifts are, what you're good at in translation and what needs to be improved. And then to train where you are, where there's way of improvement.
Thank you, Mathilde. I think that I certainly, when I do outreach with students, I always say that curiosity is one of the most important tools. So the more information that we read in all of the languages that we work in, so it's kind of like a daily newspaper a day in each of your working languages, or a weekly newspaper or a monthly newspaper, watching movies, curiosity, and working with all of our working languages. The next question that is on Menti, maybe I'll ask that question to you, Anne. This one has 6 votes. How do you behave when you find an untranslatable word in a sentence? How do you render it in a target language?
Well, what I do is I translate meaning and not words. So I try to understand what the word means exactly. And in order to do that, I can go online and do research. I can ask people, I can ask colleagues, I can try to ask the drafter sometimes, what they mean exactly. And then, if the word doesn't exist in my language, the only option is to use several words to render the same meaning.
Thank you, Anne. The next question, Rameswara, I'm going to give to you. That's the one that has 6 votes. And the question is up on the screen now. How long do you think will it take for machine translation to replace human translators or human interpreters? Translators are, of course, those who use the written word. Interpreters are those who use the spoken word. And then there's 2 other questions, which are, how can humans cope and what preparation can we humans do from now? But maybe I'll give you the first part of the question, Rameswar, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. One thing I would say is machines are not yet fully capable of replacing humans as far as machine translation is concerned. I see hybrid systems as one of the options for better machine translation, having a human in the loop of AI system. So that we can get best of both worlds. Like we want to have the machine where we have some added advantages over human, and human has some added advantage over the machines. So I will not worry much about replacing humans by machines, but I see a synergy between both of them and try to achieve best of both worlds.
Thank you, Rameswara. I've heard some colleagues talk about that we're living in the age of the centaur, whereas just as you had the man and horse, that what we are living in period now is where the translator is working with the machine and is able to achieve more than with machine alone or with translation alone. And in terms of how do we prepare in terms of coping, I think both Anne and Mathilde have shared examples with us of how you have to be both good in your languages, but also interested in technology and having the ability to adapt, because technology evolves, and so we will have to adapt to using different kinds of technology.
Yeah, one thing I would also add here is that for the machine, we need to train, right? As I said, we need data. Now there comes the role of a human as well. We need to collect data for training the AI systems. So the human translators, we need help from human translators to get those data. Otherwise, we won't be able to train a machine.
So I have another question that I'm going to choose from the Mentimeter, which is Valhalla doing better than other AI systems with more abstract texts? Which is one of the questions that Anne was asking earlier, which is that she understands how Valhalla could be very useful with very visual elements. And I was remembering the Duden paper dictionaries that I used to use when I was younger, which is basically a dictionary that has images. so that you can see the different technical components. But how does Valhalla deal with more abstract texts for which visualization or hallucination might be more difficult?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is definitely one of the limitations of Valhalla. And we are working on that. In the current work of Valhalla, we showed that it is indeed helpful in improving the performance for translating abstract text like news articles. But often in news articles we don't have the associated images. So we need to find out what are the associated images with respect to news articles that can provide more additional knowledge for the machine to do better translation. So in our work, we showed that it improves the performance by a margin of maximum 1%. But although 1% is significant for machine translation, there is still lot of things to do compared to translating sentences where visual element is clearly present. But for abstract sentences, I definitely agree. More work needs to be done, and we are actually working on that to improve Valhalla to handle abstract concepts or sentences.
Thank you, Rameswar. Let me turn to Mathilde now. And the next question that I will ask is, it has one upvote so far. Does it make your work easier if you use machine translation or not at all?
It does, yes. But it does if you are aware that it can be dangerous too. So I think it is now well known that many translators use it. And I think from what I heard, it saves 30% of the time. It makes you work quicker. The only problem is that sometimes the quality is not as good as it should be because you're tempted to keep too much of what is proposed by the machine. So I think it's a very good tool. It helps you, but it's a temptation to keep too much. So you must really, when you've always been having this temptation to follow too much the original, we call it contamination in French. I guess it's the same in English. And now if you have the original and then the machine translation, you have two texts which tempt you. So you must resist both. And the translated version is a reflection of the original one. So in a way, it's like there's an echo of it. So it's twice as tempting in a way. So you must get very firm and protect yourself. So you need to be open, but you need to be strict as well. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. And we have someone who has followed up on what you had said earlier. So they're asking, is human rights now translated as droit humain?
Oh, that's a big one. Okay, so we, in the French translation section, have decided to start using droits humains alongside droits de l'homme, because as you know, Michel, we have many bodies at the UN whose official name uses droits de l'homme. And I cannot, as the chief of French translation, make the decision for the entire UN that these bodies are going to change their names. So their names are still there. Obviously, the terminology, as far as they're concerned, needs to remain the same until a political decision is made that, the time has come to change the translation across all bodies at the UN. I don't know if that will happen. If it will happen, I have to be honest, I've tried to stay a little bit under the radar because it's a big one. And we have, Canada has its own preferred version of a new translation. France usually would prefer to not change anything. Other countries have yet other opinions. So I'd rather they decided that maybe within the Council of the Human Rights Council, and then they come back to me and they say, this is what you will do. I don't want to be responsible for the translation. It's just too politically sensitive, too complicated. But we do use it. We've started using it in certain contexts. For example, when we discuss women's rights, it's really very strange to use droit de l'homme to talk about women. So that's one case when we use it in particular. So we thought that if we started introducing it little by little, it would become normalized, and then maybe someone will realize that we're doing this, and also we need to make a decision.
So thank you, Anne. One of the questions that we have here from on Menti is how do we, and then I will turn to the audience because I just realized I've forgotten the audience. We're going to the Menti question, so you have a few minutes to prepare yourself if you wish. Someone was asking, what is the procedure to be able to go through the competitive examination process to become a UN translator? So there are resources that are with the link to this meeting, and we have included the link to the dates of the next competitive examination process. And there's other resources that are available there. And if there's anything else that you want to ask, you can also ask as a follow-up. Anne?
Maybe a good way to be informed of what's going on in terms of examinations is to follow the DGACM Facebook page, because all the examinations are announced there. And DGACM is the name of the department we're part of. And everything gets posted there. If there's an exam scheduled, that's where you'll find the information. So definitely follow that.
Yeah. And DGACM stands for the Department of General Assembly and Conference Management. So do we have any questions from the room? Yes, we have one person over here. Microphone's coming.
Hello. I was thinking, when you were saying that translators use artificial computer-aided translation more and more, and not only translators, many people are using it, and then I wonder if these people start thinking, are there human translators really necessary? Because they can compare what we do with what the machine does. So what can translators do to convince these people that we are still necessary? And in what way, like, isn't it necessary to, when we use computer-aided translation as a tool, is it necessary not to stick too much to it so that the human translation can be different from what the machine renders?
I think that's a really good question. So I'll say a few words, and then I'll invite the panel members if they want to say something about that. The purpose of the translation that we do is to facilitate an intergovernmental process where people are seeking to reach a consensus about something, where they're trying to achieve mutual understanding. So some of the work that we do with our clients is that we work with client surveys to find out what their feedback is. How do they feel about our translations? And we're very fortunate here when we have meetings in person, because we can go and ask delegates how do they feel about documents. And recently we received some feedback that someone was not happy with the French and Spanish quality of a document, and they gave the feedback about the document number. So we went and looked up the document number, and we hadn't translated that document, actually. It was a machine translation that was generated by the Secretariat. And so it was interesting to see that they were not happy with it. And so now we need to find a way to get back to our clients and the people who organize the meeting to say, just so that you know, the people were not happy with the quality of the machine translation that you used, because it did not facilitate the intergovernmental process, because people were talking at cross purposes, because they didn't understand each other. Anne, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I think one thing we can do is to show examples of publications that were translated by a machine and we're not good. I mean, there are some of the, including at the UN, sometimes somebody thinks, it's faster and it's cheaper and I can do it myself. Why would I, go through the trouble of having to, pay for the translation and wait all the time? So I think, bringing up those examples where really the machine translation wasn't good and showing that. I mean, you said, should we strive to make the human translation as different as possible from the machine translation? I think that's a little bit artificial as a way of, showing how useful we are. But I have trust in what we do, and I know that it's very different from what the machine can do, and I know how different it is. So I'm assuming that clients who need a real translation can tell the difference. The problem is that sometimes, including in organizations, the translation is just done because the translation is needed officially and nobody actually uses it. And that's where it's dangerous, right? Because if nobody tries to use it, nobody will see that it's not good as done by the machine. So there, that's where sometimes we're a little bit in trouble. But I trust that the difference is still very obvious and that clients can tell. I trust. Maybe I'm naive.
Mathilde, would you like to say something?
Well, I would just add something. Machine translation has been designed in the idea that post-edition has two levels. So there's the high level, which is meant to become really, to reach the level of a human translation, and I think it's called the light post-editing. And I think there we're not competitive. If you don't need quality, if you just need to know approximately what is in the text, go with the machine. I would say to everyone, it's no problem. Sometimes you'll get into trouble, but there's no big damage seen. But if you need a very high quality, you need human translators to post-edit text. But what we should do is, I think, outreach, awareness, and we have to defend ourselves. I think translators have always had to defend their profession, because it's a long story, Everybody thought you just need to know two languages to become a translator. That's always been the case, and it's not right. So now we have a new fight, but it's worthwhile fighting. And I think if we don't do it, there will be a few catastrophes and people will go back to us. So.
Sure. Rameswar, would you have any thoughts on that one, on how translators can help defend themselves from your perspective?
Yeah, I think I agree with what other panel members also said. This is definitely going to be competitive. As a AI researcher, I definitely know what are the shortcomings of machine translation systems currently available in technical terms, but we are working on it. And we try to replace the humans, for example, right? So, but still we have so many shortcomings. Now, on the other hand, I would say that as things are becoming competitive, also there are so many added advantages human translators have, machines doesn't have it yet. So one example I would say is that many machine translation systems are coming up with a lot of issues on bias, privacy, and also proprietary issues. So hate, and so all these added disadvantages where a human translator doesn't need to care about all those things. So yeah, so I think it's a competitive, but still there are enough opportunities for both machine translation as well as human translation to prosper in their respective areas.
Well, thank you, Rameswar. Thank you, Mathilde. Thank you, Anne. I think that we're coming up to the end of our panel discussion on the subject, and I want to thank everyone who participated in the process. I want to thank not only the speakers who are here today, but also it wouldn't have been possible without the wonderful team that is behind the scenes. So thank you to Anna, Roberta, Nadia, Natalie, Niverte, and Yiying for all of your work. I wish you all a pleasant week and hope to see you around, maybe at the Palais or virtually online. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.